Did you guys hear Reverend Allen?
Very good.
Was it clear enough? Good.
Louder.
You were louder.
Louder.
You need to be louder. I need to be louder.
I do.
That's why she got so fat here so fast, because she has a Maserati.
So you're just gonna pin that video to the
I don't think I can do that, can I?
Hey, Pastor. That was
It does,
quick.
right?
You got it. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah.
Let me go back to me.
That's
I
sure.
got these three dots right there. Click on it and go to pin. It's
Huh?
You pin the video so it stays up.
That's optional.
But I thought,
Look, at this stage, it's optional, my sister.
Look, okay.
Thank you so much. You awesome.
Okay.
You look awesome. Come on,
And I
right
thought that
now.
was
Sit
so
it here.
good.
Sharing your screen.
I think I better go grab my mask just to be on the
This is my screen. Then you can pin that video so none of the other people show it.
We'll try and put it
We
when
rocking. We
You got
rocking.
that right?
Yeah.
All right, you guys, you are live on First Mit's Facebook, so please say hi.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm
Good
about to
evening.
admit everyone to Zoom, and then, oh,
What? Everybody phone on vibrate or silent?
Yes, make sure.
I don't know how to connect this to Facebook.
Glenda's here now. I can put my
I don't know
phone
how to connect this to Facebook.
Well, I'm glad
That was
you
the missing
got
piece.
read through the whole email. We're remote.
I was like, we need to get her a helicopter.
Thank God I drive a sports car.
That's what we said. We said she got the Maserati. Zoom.
Here on time. That's exactly what happened.
Praise the Lord.
I know.
And no cops.
And no police. Yes. Can you imagine? That would have not been good.
The trauma.
I know. I'd have been like, look, I'm so sorry. Can I get a warning?
All right, we rocking. Okay.
It was good. I was already dressed. So it's like I just had to get in the car. Yeah. Do you look cold? And Katie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll
Looking up. Yeah.
I was like, traffic.
Is she gonna make it?
But you were against the traffic. We had a plan. Evelyn, because I got her.
Yeah.
I called her, but no one answered. So
Uh-huh.
I was like, okay, I don't know where I'm gonna get a number.
Right.
And then then she called back, and she said, did you think it's remote? She said, no, I'm 1 minute away. I said, praise the Lord. Okay, so all we gotta do is get Miss Glenda here.
Yeah.
He's like, you'll be talking,
Uh-huh.
and then she'll like.
Okay, you guys, this is what I recommend. We're having a few technical difficulties connecting to
Okay.
Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
We are on First Metropolitan's Facebook, and we are on live for Zoom. So I'm going to let everybody into the Zoom meeting. There are about 14 people waiting in the Zoom room. And maybe you guys can start just a preliminary dialogue with the group that's already here.
Mm-hmm.
And once I've resolved this, I'll let you guys know, and we can also stream live to Nami's Facebook. Is that okay?
Okay?
All right. And maybe you want to say something to that effect to the people as they're coming in. Okay. So you guys are good for Zoom and good for First Metro.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for the first in a series of the Diaspora Mental Health Dialogues. We are excited and we are looking forward to bringing forth to you this presentation with our panelists. We certainly want to thank our host, First Metropolitan, Pastor Ogletree, who has opened up his facility for this occasion. We want to invite him to allow us to come and pray our opening. Pastor Ogletree.
Thank you. We're delighted to host you all tonight, and we just look forward to what God is going to do through this first of Thursday nights. Let's pray. Father, we do thank you for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Greater Houston. We thank you for this initiative to break down the stigma and to help our people as it regards to mental health. We thank you for the panelists. We thank you for everything that's going to be said tonight that will help people get a new look on life and on mental health. Your word says, cast all of our cares upon you because you care for us. And tonight, you are caring for us through Nami. And we bless you and ask your blessings upon this in each and every Thursday. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Ogletree. I want to introduce our panelists. We have some additional persons coming to join us via Facebook. We have the Zoom audience. We welcome you to this presentation, and we're glad that you joined us tonight. Let me introduce our two panelists. We have Ms. Glenda Damas. She is the attending mental health clinician for Pearls of Change. She is a licensed practitioner in counseling. She'll tell you a little bit more about her experience. And then we have Ms. Evelyn Nunez, also a licensed practitioner in the mental health field. Ladies, if you do a brief introduction, that would be great.
Sure. So I'll start. My name is Evelyn Nunez, and my background is in clinical psychology. So I've worked with different populations such as homeless, children, elderly. I've worked in hospital settings, so psychiatric, and currently I'm in the private practice sector, and also juvenile. I worked in juvenile centers before, so I don't know, I've really enjoyed my career. It's been 10 years that I've been in the field, and it's truly a joy.
Would you mind doing the translation?
Oh, no. So it's Spanish? Okay. Mi nombre es Evelyn Núñez y he trabajado en el área de psicología por 10 años. He trabajado con personas adultas, con niños, con personas indigentes, y para mí es un gran honor trabajar en lo que es psicología mental. Me encanta ayudar a las personas y bueno, continúo teniendo el gran gusto de trabajar en eso.
Gracias.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you all again, as Mr. Allen stated, for joining us this evening. I'm Glenda Damas. I am the attending clinician for Pearls of Change Wellness. I've been in practice for about 5 years. I got my start with working with kids in foster care. I currently, again, have my own private practice. I treat teens from the age of 15 and geriatrics up to 65. I specialize in trauma. But I treat, again, as I stated, every mental illness that you could possibly think of. I also have the pleasure of serving as a board of director for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Greater Houston. So it's been a joy to, walk on this journey, most importantly, with raising awareness over the importance of removing the stigma attached to mental health, especially in the minority community. I am a huge advocate for making sure that we get the support that we need. So I'm honored to be here this evening to share, some knowledge and resources with you all, because the ultimate goal is to make sure that we get the support that we need.
Thank you. This event is sponsored by the Bay Good Foundation through Nami Greater Houston. As mentioned, my name is Preston Allen. I'm serving as your moderator today. The goal of this project is to increase the level of awareness and utilization and access to resources in mental health, particularly in Latinx and African American communities. We want to mention special thanks to the NAMI Greater Houston team, Neil Sarahan, Angelina Hudson, Jessica McDaniel, Asta Sharma, and Aditi Chokti. Just as importantly, we want to thank each of you that are in the greater Houston area for joining us this evening for this very important discussion and dialogue on mental health. As I mentioned, this is the first of a series of 4 dialogues. We hope that you can join us each week, every Thursday, from 6:30 to 7:30 via Zoom and Facebook Live. We've asked our panelists to provide a brief introduction, so we'll go directly into questions that I have set up as the moderator to query into their expertise, knowledge, and how they can help us as a community improve our mental health situations. Let me pose this question to both of you. What type of patients are you seeing? Adults, adolescents, teens, and what type of diagnosis, if you can, help us with identifying? What do you see going on with your patient population?
So what I've noticed lately has been a increase in anxiety, you know, because a lot of individuals don't know what's next, like what's going to happen 3 months from now, what's happening, you know, with our jobs, what's happening with our kids, most importantly now, which is the most, you know, important topic on the table, is what's going to happen with schools starting come August. So a lot of individuals are struggling with the unknown, which causes a higher level of anxiety. So one of the biggest things that we are tackling is trying to minimize that fear, the fear of the unknown, that part that they don't really understand what's taking place. And anxiety is manifesting very different in a lot of individuals. It is, you know, causing depression as well. They're seeing, you know, a higher level of kind of isolating themselves, taking this social isolation a little bit further than it was intended to be. So I would say most importantly right now, anxiety has been very heavy. What do you think?
No, I definitely agree with that. I've been working mostly with adults, young adults, some children, and children are really struggling actually with this because they're not able to go and interact with other kids. They're at home all the time, and sorry. And so I do notice that children are having a little bit more anxiety. Adults are also having anxiety due to, like you mentioned, the unknown and what's going to happen. Am I going to maintain my job, or like financially, do we need to make changes? And so I agree, anxiety has been in increase lately, but depression has too. And of course, it makes sense because individuals are so isolated, like you mentioned, and it's kind of heartbreaking because nobody knows what really is going to happen, but we're trying our best, right?
That's right, absolutely.
Help us understand, without revealing too much of your practice techniques, but help us to understand some of the suggested practices that you communicate to your patients in helping them deal with conditions such as anxiety, depression, and things of that nature.
So it depends on where the anxiety lies. So for example, if they're receiving anxiety or higher level of anxiety because of what's taking place right now, news, media, all of that, one of the biggest suggestions that I make for my clients is limit your amount of media intake. You know, kind of minimize how often you are digesting and allowing yourself to absorb all of that information. It's okay to be informed, but don't be overly saturated. So sharing that as a technique, as a coping skill also helps. And I also provide them a really good way of just, you know, reminding themselves to focus on what they have control over. Because when we take, you know, ourselves out of trying to, you know, focus on the whole picture, and we can just cue into maybe 1 or 2 things, that helps minimize the level of anxiety that we're experiencing as well. So just focusing on what we have control over and minimizing media intake for those that are struggling with what's taking place are some of the coping skills that I've recommended.
Okay.
Thank you.
For me, I definitely use the staying away from media in some individuals because they're trying to learn new information, and unfortunately there isn't enough information right now that will give them any kind of peace. So limiting, I think it's very important. I personally have also shared a lot of mindfulness. I really think it's important to stay in the present and try to be as grateful as we can about what we have and not what we don't have or what's going to happen tomorrow. But if I try and stay in my present, that's going to help me at least have that control that you were mentioning. So at least those are two of the coping skills that I try, or techniques that I try and use with my clients.
Thank you. Walk me through, if I were a potential patient or a new person that you began to see or wanted to see in your practice to take in, you opened your practice to, what kind of are the initial pieces that, if I'm not knowing what to expect, you know, we all have our concept of the therapist, so to speak, with the couch in the room and the questions and those types of things. But take us through some practical scenarios that would help understand of how to get through the wall, to get to the first therapeutic session, what's to be expected, that type of thing.
So, initial intake is always challenging because it's overwhelming because you have a client that's sitting there going through all that paperwork. So what I like to do is have my clients complete their paperwork before coming in office. So everything is done electronically. They have the ability to complete it within the comfort of their own home, and kind of go back and forth over responses before they actually submit all that documentation to me. And that gives me the ability to do my background, on just, familiarizing myself with my client before they actually come into office. And then for me, that helps me to alleviate the stressors that they would have over, being a new patient or a new client coming in therapy, not knowing what to expect. I always like to tell them, I'm not diagnosing you with a checklist. I just want to talk to you. I just want to sit down. I just want us to have dialogue, and amid that dialogue is how I render my diagnosis. But it's so casually done to where they're like, that's what I have. Okay, so we're going to work on that? Absolutely, cool. All right, great. These are my goals. These are my interventions. All right, let's get started. They're so eager to move forward because of the way that I make it so comfortable for them to do in the beginning. Now, if I were sitting there with a bun on the top of my head with my glasses on and my checklist, it would kind of be intimidating for them, especially when you're sharing some of the most vulnerable, challenges and life experiences. You want to make sure that it is the most comfortable experience. So, yeah.
All right, so on my part, I definitely agree with the documentation, the electronic. It's great to do it that way because if not, you have an individual that's nervous because they've never been in with a therapist, and so it's like you mentioned, it's so intimidating, and they're writing down things, and so I also create an environment where it's very casual, where I like to joke a little bit, I try to make the person feel as comfortable as they can be, and it's just a conversation, like you'll ask them about certain things and what they're going through, but I don't know, I try to balance it out as much as I can so the person can feel comfortable. By the end of the session, I usually ask them if they're comfortable with me, because if they're not, it's okay. I don't take it personally, and if that's the case, it gives me the ability to refer them out, because to me the most important thing is for the patient or client to have that connection with the therapist. It's so important. If you don't have that connection, then it's not going to go as well or as fast, and the experience may not be as good.
And if I may elaborate on what something that Evelyn stated, that is one of the biggest challenges that I found that within the African American community is having a connector, like having a therapist that I can relate to. So one of the things that I've removed is I don't use my clinical, dialect or dialogue or wording with my clients Especially because I don't want them to feel like, wait, what are you saying? I have, I'm crazy? Like, you're telling me that I have to do this? And they're quick to place that labeling on it. So what I do is I take all that out because I want you to understand that this is very normal. It's no different than if you go see a cardiologist because you're having heart palpitations and it doesn't make sense to you. I want you to understand that it's comfortable to come in and talk about that anxiety, that depression, those parts of you that you don't understand. But the key is making sure that you find a therapist that you can connect to. But yeah, so I just wanted to elaborate on that part.
Ms. Nunez, can you do just a brief summary in your bilingual application?
Like in Spanish?
Yes.
Sure, I can do that. Bueno, la forma en la que yo trabajo en mi práctica es mando todos los documentos electrónicamente para que sea un poco más sencillo, menos intimidante, y ya cuando la persona viene a mi oficina lo hago muy casual, es una conversación, no hay ningún tipo de listas, no hay diagnósticos, simplemente es una conversación casual en donde trato de hacer al paciente que se sienta lo más cómodo posible. Y al final de la sesión le pregunto al paciente de nuevo si está cómodo, porque si no hay comodidad, entonces la relación con el terapeuta, que es tan importante, no es tan fuerte. Por lo cual les pregunto o les comento que si no se sienten de una forma cómoda, me digan para yo poder ayudarles a encontrar a un terapeuta o a un psicólogo con quien ellos se conecten mejor.
For those that have joined us via Facebook, we certainly thank you for joining us. We had a few technical challenges to get you into the room. You're in the room now, and you're in conversation, dialogue with two specialists in the field of mental health, practitioners, Glenda Damas and Evelyn Nunez. So I've been asking them, posing them questions, general questions about their type of practice, the type of patients that they see, some of the conditions and the challenges that they face, what they're seeing, and how they can actually help the person break down the barrier from going from a situational awareness of what mental illness is to a situation where they're seeing the therapist themselves. Let me also give you the Nami Greater Houston C Center warm line number. There's somebody standing by. If there's someone that needs help, if you're in the Greater Houston area, the number is 713-970-4483. I will repeat that, 713-970-4483. Do we have any questions from the audience thus far? And if you have questions, please send them to via the medium that you're viewing us in. Let's continue until we have some questions from the audience. Tell me, from a practitioner standpoint, do practitioners get burnout?
You want me to start?
Do we? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, definitely. That is very common. We can definitely burn out. I think it has to do with the fact that we want to help out so much, and usually you'll have therapists. We have similar personalities where we want to help out so much that sometimes we don't. Unfortunately, even though we tell people to take care of themselves, we don't take care of ourselves. I'm sure you've experienced that before. So yes, we definitely burn out, and it's just a matter of us becoming aware of it so we can take care of ourselves, and then we can better serve.
So one of the things that I often share is that you can't be the best version of yourself or anyone else unless you are the best version of yourself for yourself. And for me, of course we get burned out. Of course I get burned out, especially being that often I feel I'm so vetted into what I do. Aside from it being in my office, I often take my cases home with me, and I look over and I reflect on, dialogue, during session, And I've often found myself on the weekend, taking notes just to bring back for like a session on Monday to say, hey, this is, what I want to do, or an approach that I feel like we should take to, render a solution here. But I can honestly say it wasn't until this pandemic that I realized, okay, you need to set boundaries. And you need to be very intentional about setting boundaries. So, since March, or since we were truly, hit with, COVID-19, before then, I was just like probably 6 days a week working. And now I can honestly say I only work 4 days out of the week. And I'm selfish now. And I'm so happy.
That's great. That's great. Yes. We have a question.
We do have a question in the Zoom chat. Cheryl Duncan asks, what age does a parent what age can't a parent get a child admitted to the hospital because they are of age?
They cannot. I would say
Maybe the youngest and then the oldest. So the youngest age group diagnosing, being clinically admitted, and then the oldest after they, So I'll let you take that, being that,
well, in my experience, usually I would think that after the child's 18, you can always take the child to the hospital, and they will do the evaluation. However, you cannot force them to stay admitted, and after 18 they're considered adults, so I would think that that's the limit. When it comes to youngest age, that one's tough. My guess is
6.
Yes,
6.
probably.
We don't diagnose honestly over the under the age of 6, because 6-year-olds, they're still kind of going through that phase of, you can still say terrible too if you want to, but they're too young to diagnose with anxiety or any type of, mental illness. So at that age, I wouldn't consider hospitalization at that age. I agree. Yeah.
We do have one more question. How much can someone expect to pay for counseling services?
Yeah, that varies. The fee varies. It just depends on if you, seek assistance from a therapist that works on a sliding scale. But I can give you the range. The range would probably be between, I would say, $80 up to $250. One of the things that I do want to, per 45 minutes, absolutely. So one of the things that I do want to bring to light is a lot of insurance companies and employees offer EAP programs.
I agree. Yes.
And a lot of employees don't know that their employer have that benefit available for them. So if you are interested in getting therapy and you feel like the out-of-pocket cost is a little too much, I would recommend that if you're employed and if you have, insurance through your employer, contact your employer to see if they are offering a EAP for you, because often they give anywhere from 4 to 6 sessions free of charge for you. They cover the fee. And some of them actually, because of COVID-19, are doubling up on the amount of EAP sessions that they're offering, because they know that so many individuals are struggling during this present time and they want to be of support.
Can I add
Sure.
something? It's true, you're right. I think the scale that you mentioned is pretty accurate. However, there are some organizations that do offer free therapy. It's just a matter of looking for resources. And, obviously, maybe it won't be once a week. It depends on availability. However, there are some resources that have free therapy. So at that point, you're not really paying anything. You're just going, and some organizations actually have the therapy, and they have psychiatrists in office or clinic, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of resources available out there.
Yes.
Actually.
So we're talking about individual practice and therapeutic sessions that you have through patients. What's your view on the peer group and advocacy, the approach that Nami uses with related to getting to the larger population with specialized groups, subgroups that may be able to help persons where they are in their community?
I think it's great. I think we're doing an amazing job with providing those groups, with providing individuals that are in the community that are trained, most importantly, to kind of give them insight and education because of their walk. Who better to learn from than someone that have experienced exactly what you've experienced? So what we bring in those groups for the community are individuals that know what it's like to have had struggled with the mental illness and they've overcame, or they have a family member that is struggling and they have, taking a approach of, I want to be an educator, I want to help, I want to provide resources firsthand. So having those peer-to-peer groups, having those individuals within the community, offering those resources, offering those group sessions to kind of educate on specific topics is the most amazing thing that we could have created.
Great.
I agree. I mean, I think that there's a lot of, there is some awareness, but sometimes the information that's out there, it's not very clear. And so these kinds of groups and this kind of information can be very valuable because it's a little bit more accurate, it's more direct, it comes from individuals like Glenda was talking about, where they've experienced it or had a family, or and so I feel like it's a lot more relatable.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I do have a couple more questions. Someone with the First Metropolitan Church Group would like to know if you guys are personally associated with any EAP programs.
So I am credentialed with Cigna and United Healthcare, and any of their EAPs that they offer, I do accept those EAPs.
I am on Wellspring EAP.
Okay. I have a guest who would like to ask a question herself, and what I'll do is I will just restate her question so that the Facebook Live group is able to hear it. Just a moment.
Why don't we come back to that in a moment once Jessica pulls that out. Let me ask the question so we don't have any lag time. Since the onset of the COVID-19 crisis, we've had an additional crisis that has brought out the level of social unrest. Basically, we've seen the open, blatant measures denying African American, Latinx citizens their right to due process. They are dying at the hands of persons that are sworn to serve, but there's also trauma within those communities as well. So the question to you is, how does the social pandemic play into what you see as patients? You mentioned a little bit about it earlier. And then follow-up, is it adding up to an already existing trauma? And for the general public, those communities of color, what methods do you suggest in getting through that trauma? You mentioned about reducing the interaction with the news and things of that nature.
Whew.
I know, that was a lot. I had to get it in there though.
Boy, wow. Yeah, so when we look at the social pandemic that we are dealing with,
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, just taking everything into perspective, my response initially, the gasp, wasn't because of the loadedness of the question, but more so because of the question itself.
Yes.
At the end of the day, most importantly, I am a woman of color, and I treat everyone. And I will say this, I love my clients, and I love the admiration that they have for me as an African American woman, because what I experienced was so much respect. And they actually acknowledged what was taking place. Glenda, how do you feel? Like, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you and the things that you do for me. And this is coming from, you know, my Caucasian clients, recognizing the disparities that we are experiencing as a culture. And so when we look at that and see just how it can impact us, it's trauma. It's us reliving experiences that our grandfathers, our ancestors thought that they had overcome for us. So it's now back, you know, prevalent today, and we fight, but we fight in a way that we educate ourselves. So that way the education that we possess supersedes anything physical. So when we talk in terms of what do we do as individuals to minimize trauma, you educate yourself. So you'll know exactly what it looks like that you should be fighting for and how you should fight. And then it eliminates any apprehension, any anxiety, anything that you will experience. When you've educated yourself on the best approach to take, being responsive instead of reactive, that eliminates all of it. So we can hold our heads high and know that everything that we are experiencing as individuals is only a setup, you know, to make us much stronger as individuals.
Thank you.
We have a question from the Facebook audience, which kind of hits on some things that you've already discussed.
Okay.
But the question is, how do we overcome the stigma or get out of denial about mental illness?
Ooh, that's a great
I like that
one.
one.
Yeah, I'll let you take it.
All right. Okay, so I definitely have encountered a lot of stigma in Hispanic or Latin cultures. I'm sure you have experienced that in your community as well. And, you know, in general, I think there's a lot of stigma. So I think that the best way that we reduce that is by educating and also normalizing, because at least the way I see a mental illness or distress or a diagnosis is it's the same as any other illness, like diabetes. You know, like your pancreas is not working well, so you go and you take medications for it. So it's the same as if an individual has schizophrenia or bipolarity or just depression and anxiety. It's still, you know, maybe your brain is working, however it needs a little bit of help, right? And then when it comes to therapy, it goes back to education, and I really think it's going to take some time. It's not going to be real fast. I see a lot of difficulty in multi-generational homes. Like, you know, you have some Hispanics who the parents or the grandparents lived in other countries, and then the younger generations are so open about it, and they're like, oh, I want to go to therapy or this and that, and the mom's like, oh, but you're not crazy. So so it's just educating for sure, and normalizing, understanding that it's normal. It's something that all of us can go through.
And I'll add to that. I just have one thing that I want to add that I think is so important. Within our culture, we've been taught to pray it away. So that eliminates us talking about it. Take it to God. You don't tell anybody that, you know, you're dealing with anything. But the way I present it is, faith without work is dead. So your faith is your belief in God, and your work is you coming to therapy. So, yeah, very true.
That's a wonderful way to put it, in a practical way. Since we now have a focus on systemic racism and its effects throughout our U.S. society, how has this racism restricted the opportunities for minority therapists?
I can't say that it has.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't, you know, in all honesty, it goes back to just what I said about how my clients, you know, of every racial background have been very receptive and want to talk about it, you know, to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't want to talk about that today. Can we talk about something else? But they want to talk about it, and they want to talk about it with me, you know? So I can't say that any of what's taking place right now is affecting those seeking therapy. In fact, I don't know if you agree with me, my numbers have doubled. Like, I mean, it's crazy. And it's a good thing, because I'm like, so many individuals are now like, I'm going to therapy. Like, I need therapy. Like, this is traumatic. This is trauma that I need to figure out how to work through. And so, no, I can't say that there's been any negative, connotation surrounding what's taking place right now.
Let me just follow up. So we know that there are capacities with therapists, meaning there's a minimum and a maximum number of patients that you can see within a given spectrum. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then we know, and then the second thing is that we know that the field historically has had underrepresentation.
Correct.
So I wanted to address that. What do you see those barriers being, and how can they be improved?
Well,
Okay. Well, at least in my experience, I feel like there are therapists out there that, for example, there's so much need for bilingual and Hispanics and all of that. And I have met so many great therapists throughout my career. However, a lot of them do get a little scared of opening their own business. And I do see that limitation there, even though they're great. And I can see them working very well, caring, everything. They already got the education. It's all there, but it's just the fear to make that jump into having their own practice. I don't know if you've seen that. In all honesty, I think within our culture, it's the lack of education. It's the lack of them knowing that mental health is actually a profession, and that we are deemed as, doctors in our field and what we do. So a lot of individuals don't understand what it takes, also the education piece of, the process of going through educating yourself to become a licensed professional counselor. So if anything, most importantly, pulling, I think, more awareness, them seeing a lot more licensed professional counselors present than the mental health clinicians, psychotherapists, and counselors. When they see more of us, like we're out, and they know that we have a presence, then that kind of pulls you to say, I think I should do that, or I could be a counselor, or I could be a therapist. It's no different than if you're attending a university and you want to be a part of a Greek organization. And if you don't see that Greek organization on the yard, you're not going to be inclined to want to be a part of it, right? So the more presence we have and the more support and backing that we have with pushing individuals to seek mental health support, you'll see a rise on individuals coming into the profession.
Should we be pushing our political representatives to offer more opportunities from the financial and support, some incentives within the local and state government?
Absolutely.
Yes,
National?
Definitely. Oh, definitely. There's so much need.
Yeah, mental health is,
all throughout, in schools, like, and I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're fine.
But I have noticed a lot of, children or teenagers attempting or thinking, becoming suicidal. And I think there's so much need for therapists out there. It's very helpful, but unfortunately some individuals either have stigma that in order for you to go to therapy you need to be crazy, or it can be too expensive, or it's not going to work, when actually I'm biased because I'm a therapist. However, I think it's just great. You can see so much difference in an individual, and we can help so much. It's just,
Well, when you say in terms of local and state funding, I totally agree, and I think that funds and backing should be there, because a lot of individuals have always attached mental illness to veterans. And I'm not a veteran. Are you a veteran? And I have Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder. So, and it's an anxiety disorder. I've had it since I was 13 years old. Didn't know, I wasn't diagnosed until I was in my 20s. Now, had I known at an early age that I was OCD, that would have eliminated me freaking out every time somebody touched something in my room, or touched me for that matter, you know? So education is key. We need to remove the stigma. We need to stop, you know, demoralizing individuals that share that they have a mental illness. Anxiety is very common. So many individuals struggle with social anxiety. That is a common anxiety disorder. So when we talk about support and funding and backing, absolutely it needs to take place.
In this project, we have noticed from both sectors in the African American and the Latinx community an increase in the number of calls into helplines for suicidal ideation within youth. Can you speak to that briefly?
Okay.
As long as you'd like.
All right. So I actually hold a contract with KDISD as well. I work at one of the high school campuses as one of their counselors. I also have spearheaded a trauma-informed training that we've gone throughout the district and kind of educated administrators and teachers on recognizing trauma. Okay. So when we talk about suicidal ideations, it's very high amongst teens. And the main reason is because life challenges. They don't know how to properly cope. Performance-based. Oh, you know, I'm not, you know, getting a 90 in my AP course. I want to kill myself. You know, my friend group is no longer talking to me. You know, this world is pointless. What they equate to life-ending experiences is not, you know, practical, I have to say, but it's only because they have not been taught how to properly cope with their emotions. And that is the biggest reason why we see so many teens suicidal and, you know, having those, you know, thoughts and desires to end their life.
Yes, I have seen a lot of that in my practice. I've seen a lot of teenagers going through emotional turmoil. I agree with you, they don't understand, they don't know how to manage. I do think that sometimes even technology can be great, but sometimes it can be very negative, whereas in previous generations, I guess bullying could just be at school. Now it's not just in school, it's also at home, it's whenever. And I think that that's also something that's affecting these children to become so overwhelmed, and then they don't know how to manage, so they feel suicidal. It's a reality. Yeah.
We're going to take another question from our general audience. Miss Jessica.
Ms. Cheryl, are you ready with your question?
While she's posing that question, I will give you the Nami C Center warm line number again. 713-970-4483. 713-970-4483. We want you to take that number down, put it someplace permanently, so that you can also make recommendations where people can get help, at least talk to someone about what's going on in their life. In several cases, we've known that has been a tremendous help to them, decreasing some of the level of anxiety, and they're getting somebody that they can talk to, and the problem can be addressed. We're still formulating that question. So let me ask you another question, ladies. You've been so great as panelists today, and we're just having a warmth of information from you. What do you think are innovations in therapy that you see that are happening now? I know we have telehealth that can help to improve the outcomes for those facing mental illness, wellness issues.
Telehealth.
Yeah, telehealth has been great, I think, especially right now with a lot of individuals being scared of getting out, you know, because what if I get coronavirus? And so I think telehealth has been great, and it's showing that even though it's great to be there in person, it's so helpful, even if it's a video call. You know, it's still, I think it's extremely helpful, and it's innovative, because in the past this wasn't as common. You know.
Do you allow that in your practice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been offering telehealth sessions since the day my doors opened. You know, when the pandemic hit, they were like, oh, well, you know, everybody's moving to virtual. And I'm like, well, I've been doing that. Okay. You know, so, but when we talk about innovative, the one thing that I can say that, you know, in therapy should always be innovative is the therapeutic approach of the therapist itself. Every therapist should have a tailored, should I say, approach to the client and not just their practice in general. So if you have a client that comes in that's battling trauma, you need to know what type of therapeutic approach that will be great to assist them. And that to me is what would make, you know, the field very innovative, is making sure that you stay abreast of different therapeutic approaches and practices that would best suit a client to help make sure that you drive them forward in a very positive way.
Thank you. Are we ready for the question?
We are. I apologize. There was a technical issue. Ms. Cheryl, can you try again, please?
Yes. What I was saying from the question I had entered earlier is my daughter was 15 and I was able to admit her to the hospital. She got to be 16. This was in 2011. She was happy to agree to be admitted.
16.
And that's the reason why I asked about what age. And when she got to be 16, she could not be admitted without her agreement.
Did you all, were you able to hear?
Can you repeat that?
I heard it, yeah. So when she say agreement, this is the only thing that I could come to, because she's still a minor. And ultimately the decision lies on the parent to admit their child.
Yes.
But when we talk in terms of an agreement, the only thing that I can see that stands is if they're them saying, are you agreeing to participate? Are you agreeing to be fully present? Are you agreeing to be active in the program? Because admitting them is one thing, but you have to make sure that, you know, your child is willing to go through that program and do the work. Otherwise, they're just admitted and nothing actually will end up changing for them.
Yes, because they're allowed to decide if they want to participate or not in certain groups or in certain activities that they're
Correct.
you know, allowed to do.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Michelle said that was very helpful. Thank you.
Good.
I have another question. Are you all seeing a lot of health professionals seeking counseling since COVID, especially the frontliners?
Yes, absolutely.
I haven't encountered anybody in my practice, but I can only imagine.
Yeah, I have.
And there is one more question. Is experiencing trauma considered a mental illness? And what if I know someone who has had a hard life, but they still don't believe they are quote unquote sick?
Okay, it's a little bit, I guess, not complicated necessarily, but you have to dig a little bit more into it to diagnose. It's not necessarily a mental illness. However, trauma is usually leads to depression or anxiety. Those are the two diagnoses that I usually find in individuals who have experienced a lot of trauma. But therapy will be useful no matter what, because when you have trauma, there's a lot of processing that needs to be done, and it's very useful when that's guided.
Yes, I agree. So more than likely, if an individual has experienced trauma at any point and it has gone untreated, yes, they will develop a mental illness, and it will manifest in various ways. It just depends on exactly what that trauma is and what it looks like. So any individual that has experienced trauma, I would recommend that you get with a trusted psychotherapist to help you work through those challenges.
We are just about out of time. We are so appreciative for our panelists in bringing forth and highlighting some of the pertinent issues related to and how they treat patients. They have also provided some general information about what goes on behind the wall of the therapist, some intimate information and resources, so you've been able to look at their window. I certainly want to thank the First Metropolitan family for offering up their home, their church, to this event. We are so appreciative to Pastor John Ogletree, and we're appreciative to Pastor Johnny Ogletree, who's been so helpful in helping us to organize this. They have great technical wizardry. And then secondly, I'd like to thank Miss Jessica McDaniel with Nami, Greater Houston, who's been behind the scenes producing this event along with her associate. We thank them both, and kudos to them and the entire Facebook family and Nami. The website and resource page for Nami Greater Houston is about to present itself. That's what I'm believing, I'm being told. They're going to produce that for you. That's what I've been reading from. The Nami Greater Houston C Center Warm Line is on there. It also talks about different types or levels of care, such as emerging unwellness, the person is unwell, or the person is in crisis. But also it provides additional information as well. We hope that you take